Hi, my name is Scott, and I am a member of the visual team here at Infor Global Solutions. I would like to welcome you to the first of two videos discussing the enhancements made to the material planning window for version 9.0. The material planning window has been enhanced with additional tools that make it easier for you to see what is transpiring with the parts in your system, and as a result to make more informed decisions when managing your inventory, especially when working in the advanced mode of the window. The enhancements we are going to cover in this video are the new net using nettable quantity view setting that applies to both the standard and advanced modes of the window, as well as the following advanced mode only enhancements: an updated layout to the advanced planning window, an option for enabling the new suggested MPS calculations, a view setting for using the first day of a planning period as the label for that period, and the ability to apply the color preferences to the advanced mode screens. We'll start with the net using nettable quantity netting option added to the view menu. When the net using nettable quantity option is enabled, the various netting screens and reports within the planning window will use the nettable quantity of the part as the starting inventory value. This allows the netting screens and reports to start with the same value that MRP utilizes when it is processing the part. This can be seen with the part shown here. As you can see, I have a quantity of 300 on hand for this part, and a demand for 300 as well, leaving me with a projected quantity of 0. However, only 200 of the on-hand quantity is nettable, and as such, MRP will only use this 200. By enabling the net using nettable quantity option, the window will now use the nettable quantity of 200, leaving the projected inventory at -100. Nettable quantity is the sum of the quantity for all locations in the part location table for the part, warehouse, and site ID selected in the material planning window. Quantities in unavailable and transit locations are not considered in this calculation. Next, we will move on to the layout changes that were made to the advanced mode screen. The advanced planning window netting grid has been split into 3 sections: supply, demand, and projected. The supply section lists all of the supply quantities for the part for each planning period, including planned orders and current firmed orders. A beginning inventory row was added to the top of this section to make it easier to see what the inventory level is projected to be at the start of any given planning period, while the gross supply row was added to provide an at-a-glance total of the incoming supply for the period. The demand section contains the planning forecast, customer demand, and dependent demand quantities for each planning period, as well as a gross demand row to show the anticipated total demand for each period. The projected section by default contains the projected inventory and current MPS rows. The projected inventory row shows what the inventory quantity is projected to be at the end of any given planning period based upon the supply and demand in that period. The current MPS row is only displayed for parts with a planning policy of master schedule and shows what the current production schedule quantities are for the part. As you might have noticed, the suggested MPS row that was displayed in previous versions of Visual is no longer displayed by default. The way that Visual approaches suggested MPS has changed in 9.0, and part of that approach involves changes to how MRP processes master scheduled parts. In order to maintain the previous MRP functionality for customers that may not want to utilize suggested MPS, a new setting was added to the options menu called Calculate Suggested MPS, which is turned off by default. When Calculate Suggested MPS is turned on, 2 new rows are added to the projected section of the advanced mode netting grid when viewing master schedule parts. The first of which is the suggested MPS row, which displays a system calculated recommendation for the part's MPS that is designed to cover all demand while not producing more than necessary. The new calculation for suggested MPS in any given planning period is as follows. If the gross demand is greater than the current firmed orders plus the proposed inventory from the previous planning period, then suggested MPS equals the gross demand minus the current firmed orders plus the proposed inventory from the previous planning period. Otherwise, suggested MPS equals 0, as there is already enough supply to cover the demand. There are a few exceptions to apply to this calculation. For the first planning period displayed, the proposed inventory from the previous period is equal to the inventory balance of the part based on your netting method, as there is no previous period. If the planning period contains the current date, then suggested MPS is adjusted for safety stock. Safety stock is subtracted from the total quantity of proposed inventory from previous period and current firmed orders. If the apply min-max multiple to master schedule parts checkbox in the MRP dialog is selected, then the suggested MPS value is adjusted for the minimum, maximum, and multiple order values for the part. The second row added when calculate suggested MPS is turned on is the proposed inventory row. The intent of the proposed inventory row is to display what the inventory level of the part would look like if all of the suggested MPS values were copied to the master production schedule for the part and MRP was run. This allows you to know what effect using the suggested MPS values would have without needing to make those changes and run MRP. The calculation used for proposed inventory in any given period is as follows. Proposed inventory equals proposed inventory from the previous period plus current firmed orders plus suggested MPS minus gross demand. As mentioned previously, changes were also made to MRP to support the new approach to calculating suggested MPS. When the calculate suggested MPS setting is turned on, MRP will no longer apply on-hand quantity or current supply orders against MPS entries when processing parts with a planning policy of master schedule. Instead, planned orders will be generated solely based on the MPS entries entered for the part. If the apply min-max multiple to master schedule parts option is enabled, then MRP will still adjust planned order quantity accordingly. These changes allow MRP to honor what is being shown in the netting screens and to make sure that the results after running MRP match the expected results. Next, we will take a look at another new option that was added to the View menu called Show First Day of Period. This option is used to specify how the planning periods are labeled. When enabled, the first day of each planning period is used as the column label for that period instead of the last day of each period being used. Here, I am using monthly planning periods, and when the setting is enabled, the planning periods are labeled with the first day of the month. And when disabled, the planning periods are labeled with the last day of the month. In addition to the advanced planning window netting grid, the Show First Day of Period setting applies to the grids within the master production schedule and planning forecast dialogues, as well as to the repetitive material planning report. The last enhancement that we will look at in this video is the ability to apply the same color preferences that are available in the standard mode to the advanced mode screens. To do this, go to the Options menu and select Color Preference. In the Color Preference dialog, select the checkbox to apply to Advanced mode and then click the OK button. The color selections will now be applied to the Advanced window. Rows showing totals are presented in slightly darker colors to help them stand out. And this concludes part 1 of my discussions on the enhancements made to the material planning window for Visual 9.0. Thank you.